Allison felt the Lord calling her to Uganda way back in 2009 before we were married. And we were at a music festival, Christian festival, and the pastor was some missions guy who was like fired up. And he was like, okay, if God's calling you somewhere, he's going to call you right now. So where's he calling you? And of course, I was like, okay. And then Allison was like, where did God call you? I'm like, I'm pretty sure he called me just to stay in Vancouver. And then Allison's like, oh, God's calling me to Uganda. And I was like, oh, okay, good luck. And but I actually kind of did feel called to stick around here. I didn't feel like it was time to go there. She started planning that trip. And shortly thereafter, I actually ended up in the hospital. And I ended up having a major manic episode and having psychosis and ending up in the psych ward for several weeks. And we'll get back to that, but I think that was what God was kind of having for me in that time. And I think that was why he did want me in Vancouver, because that part of my story wasn't done yet. In 2012, we were going to Westside Church, and they announced, hey, we're going to Tanzania. Who's going to come? And of course, Allison's like, yep, I'm going no matter what. And I was like, I am not going no matter what. Like a good wife, she persuaded me. She elbowed me in the ribs every time at church when they would announce it. And finally I said, you know what? Okay, I will put in the application. And as you know, with short-term mission trips, if you apply, they'll take you. They'll take anyone. So they did. And we went to, not Uganda, we went to Tanzania. And while we were there, I remember just being like, this is cool, but why am I here? Why? I could have just mailed a check. Why am I here? This is very nice, and these people are great, but honestly, this seems kind of silly. And we had this one night where we were leading a camp, and we were training up youth leaders there to run these camps for the rest of the summer. And we had a fire, like a fireside gathering kind of thing. Allison went up to share her testimony, and she got into it. She shared about my mental health struggles and how it's affected our marriage. We'd only been married about a year and a half, I think, at that point. And she just went for it and said, it's been hard and God's been good, and this is our story. And she came back to the back, and they all yelled at us to come up there in Swahili, which is kind of alarming sometimes. But we went up there, and they prayed. And in East Africa, they don't wait one at a time. They all pray at once. And so that's what happened. They're all praying in Swahili and English all at once, 150 people. And they just start praying over my health, over our marriage, over things we didn't share about at all. Just very Holy Spirit-led prayer. And so we're weeping and bawling. And in that moment, I just hear God saying, this is why I called you here. And so as we're walking back to the camp or whatever, 3 different people came up to us and said, hey, I heard that God said this is why he called you here. And Allison heard the same thing. And so it was just this affirming moment of especially someone who has struggled with mental health and problems like that, to know without a doubt that this is the Lord and he's called us here and he's spoken to us. And so I'm happy to say that was in 2012. So however many years ago that was, 11 years. I've been healthy, and the Lord actually healed me while we were there. And so it's just a testimony of the Lord's goodness, and also a reason why Africa is so special to us. It's just a place where God's done amazing things in our lives and in the lives of people around us.